shelter your eyes and scrub your mind. The weatherman, he's just another bad joke. You can be a dumb little donkey like Eeyore. I'm gonna be on auto hoax, and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would.
All right, we are live. Ips Evening Deprogram for November the 19th, 2024. And friendly shout out to all the auto believers out there who don't know what's real, what's fake, and don't even know to care about it. The blissfully blue-pilled. And then also, I guess, the red pill. We should always think about how they're faring, trapped in their completely subjective choose-your-own-apocalypse nightmare version of things. But we're out here on the fringe, the cutting fringe, where it's really the most peaceful place on the world stage. Take a look at this. Is Donald Trump anymore? What the hell is this? It looks like he's got pantyhose over his face, or it's somebody with a mask, or they injected something into his cheeks. He looks embalmed, to be quite honest. This can't be Donald Trump. He's hanging out with Musk. The heights, I believe they match, but just take a look here. His eyes look like they're sewn shut. This isn't the usual orange man. He's got his hat pulled down low, and his body language is a little weird. As I watched a longer version of this where he has his face down, like he's trying to cover it. So maybe it's too much of a risk to have the two of them together. I'm not sure, but a lot of people are sharing this. Is this Donald Trump, or is it a different Donald Trump? Others say it's a fake body double. And I have a list of things to talk about today, so let's go ahead and get started with that, and then we'll go down these rabbit trails. The IPR points of interest for November the 19th, 2024. And the points of interest are just the main topics, and you can call on any of these. So today we have alien invasion prediction for December the 3rd. And this is based on someone's supercomputer calculation years ago that said that if Trump and Rogan had a podcast appearance together, the alien invasion countdown would commence, and apparently it ends on the 3rd of December. Zero discernment Q folk get deep faked very easily. Yeah, this is just sad. Oh, the person deleted it out of shame. I think I even have a second version of it. What we're looking at here is this viral picture of Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Elon Musk, and RFK and Mike Johnson in the back having McDonald's. And RFK said he was forced to eat it, by the way. RFK was asked about this later, and he says, if you're on Trump's plane, you're eating Big Macs or KFC. So here he is. He looked more excited about that dead bear carcass in that photo from a couple, 15 years ago. But here he is holding a Big Mac. And earlier he was actually photographed with some dip, like some kind of tobacco product. Again, huge hypocrite. But there's a painting by somebody from 1721 named Dees Knutson. And so the QAnoners are going wild with this because they think, look, tell me we're in a simulation without telling me we're in a simulation. Now, the obvious answer is someone took that photo and they ran it through some AI-generated AI text prompt, and they said, make this into some kind of Renaissance art. And it created this obvious spin-off. In 1721, people being painted wouldn't be looking at the painter as though he was a cameraman. So none of it looks even slightly realistic to me. But anyway, this is evidence that we're in a simulation. The Q people are all about it. And they've been sharing this like crazy. And I guess a few hours after, people started to realize, okay, this might be fake, and they might have backdated it. And then somebody got a clue about the person's name, obviously a troll. Yeah, it's a troll, but my point here is that the people who are believers in Trump and Musk and QAnon and stuff, this doesn't get any kind of critical review. Their skepticism is specifically reserved for left wing propaganda. Okay, we are joined by Tominoid, Marcus, Armin Ree, Shed Dog. Tyler432 says, "Dude, where have you been so long? Good to see you." We never went anywhere, but YouTube has censored our channels consecutively from 2018 to 2023 about 150 times. But we're back on, and phones are open. But what happened is, the other night, I woke up with this sense that I needed to I just woke up with this compulsion to contact YouTube and attempt to get all of my old channels reinstated just to see what would happen, because it's been a long time. And sure enough, they reinstated the original channel, my very first YouTube channel, which had 7,700 subs, but right now it's 5,500, and I believe that's just attrition. People getting banned, kicked off, canceling, whatever. But we're off to a good start. We're kind of consolidating. But the plan is to consolidate all of the people who have ever been a part of this think tank and see if we're all on the same sheet. Because I think most of us are still. And especially now, as we lead up to this final experiment in Antarctica, I think we have a lot to talk about. So again, glad you joined us, Havoc007. Tom103, is it one of those CGI Joes? Suzette says, looks like a mask. Austin108 says, looks like he's on Ozempic. So you're talking about Trump. And it looks like a Trump mask, to be honest. He's smaller than usual, but it definitely looks fake. Did I see the cover of The Economist? No, but I often reference the covers. So this week's cover, if someone can send it to me, or let me know which one. Oh, is it the one where Putin looks like the Terminator? Unbelievable. Okay, I see it. I'm going to pull this image up. And I have something today that I picked up in one of my feeds that really just, it's kind of mind-blowing. 1 month before JFK was shot, before he was assassinated, he and his wife were making a movie, like a home movie. And in this home movie, JFK is killed. And they simulate it using ketchup. So we'll get to that as well. But let's continue through my list. Nuke torpedoes. Russia says Ukraine attacked it using U.S. missiles. So they are ready for their response, per CNBC. Judge Juan Merchan adjourns New York City case against Trump. No sentence in the hush money case. Okay, Trump body double, we talked about that. And then, just as a general rule of thumb, if the number 33 is prominently featured in a story, it's like 33% more likely to be a hoax. So take a listen to this. I believe this just happened yesterday.
Following some more of that breaking news out of New York City tonight, a police spokesperson now says a third victim in today's stabbing spree across Manhattan has died. Police say that 36-year-old woman was attacked by that homeless man who has been arrested, and records show he has a criminal history that is quite extensive. The 3 victims were attacked in separate locations across New York.
So there you go. 3 locations, 3 victims, probably a hoax. Frank James fires 33 rounds into a subway, obviously a hoax. There's just a pattern here. But let's look at this one about JFK and Jackie, what they were doing before he died. Really strange. One of the strangest stories I've come across in a long time. JFK, and this is from Vanity Fair, JFK staged his own murder in James Bond-inspired film 2 months before his assassination. The untold tale, never before seen photos of a 1963 home movie. It's kind of morbid, but it's interesting. It opens up a lot of doors here because we're talking about movie magic. So here's a few notes, a few pull quotes. It was filmed on September 21st to September 22nd, 1963. In it, again, he fakes his own death. It says, quote here, remarkable as this home movie is, what came after it ends takes one's breath away. Footage that has not seen the light of day until now. Chief photographer's mate Robert Knudsen, a sailor assigned to the White House, accompanied the family to their weekend activities with a 16mm camera. He was asked by Jackie Kennedy to capture the presidential party on the Honey Fitz and follow them back to Hammersmith Farm, along with the Secret Service, to document a spoof murder of JFK that she and the president had devised. So under the auspices of making a spy thriller at home with their camera, they were simulating JFK's death, and they had one of their Secret Service agents come in to help them. It goes on to say, he recalls the First Lady made this unusual request, that they were making a kind of a spy movie, and asked if the agents wouldn't mind participating. She asked the agents to drive up to the main house and react as if they had just heard shots. Now, it goes on, it mentions here, too, that this includes Roy Kellerman, who was later in charge of the agents in Dallas, riding in the presidential limousine. So one of the agents that was there at the assassination was part of this little movie. So she said for them to run up and act as though they had just heard shots, and then they find the president, quote, on the floor in the foyer with ketchup smeared on him. At the time, reporters only wrote about a version where Faye is the victim. One of the photos shows Knudsen in a business suit atop a pier post with his movie camera, and it eerily foreshadows amateur photographer Abraham Zapruder 2 months later. I have a few more images from it. So here's a picture of Jackie as a director working on the film. And there you see the limousine. And it does look sort of like the Zapruder angle where they're actually, where you get the headshot. It kind of looks like it. Same distance anyway. Again, Vanity Fair. JFK suddenly clutches his chest and falls as if hit by bullets. In an absurd touch, those behind him nonchalantly step over his body. The film's better described as a middle brow. I guess it's kind of based on James Bond, but now here's another part. You see ketchup on this individual. So here's a sequence where Paul Fay, who also dies, this is JFK's wartime pal and Undersecretary of the Navy, is shown with a rope around his neck and ketchup smeared on his face and shoulder. So what are these shenanigans here? Kind of reminds me of Trump smearing the ketchup packet on his ear out there in Butler. Okay, so this is a humorous short film. Strange. I think I have a few more clips here. Okay, so in amateur fashion, they use Heinz ketchup on Kennedy and his friend Faye to make it look as though they were bleeding. Other miscellaneous takes on the film on the Honey Fitz that variously show Jackie and JFK sitting next to Faye, who has a rope around his neck and the ketchup on his mouth. Scenes where Faye drops a pistol into a bag. In related footage, Jackie carries the bag with a pistol, and she's either directing or acting in the movie. And then finally, it says, the elder Knudsen saw a prophecy, quote, I wonder if it was a premonition he had, he told the AP in 1963. It could easily have been a fantasy to release a lot of his internal fears in an effort to face the reality that his life was indeed in danger. If JFK harbored premonitions about his death, they were not specific enough to persuade him to change his plans in Dallas. And then one more part here. This is from, again, Vanity Fair. There's another oddity that would hint at misfortune to follow. The Kennedys watched dozens of films in the White House theater during JFK's time in office. The official logs of their screenings have an intriguing entry in August of 1962. Kennedy and his brother Robert, and these would be the two who died, watched The Manchurian Candidate with Frank Sinatra, about a serviceman brainwashed to kill a presidential candidate. The ultimate scene shows a murderer with a gun, looks like the bolt-action rifle used by Lee Harvey Oswald in JFK's assassination. And then Oswald did in fact spend time in the Soviet Union. It says here, reportedly Sinatra approached JFK to sign off before appearing in the picture. Now, Sinatra has another film called Suddenly that also deals with assassination. And so Suddenly and Manchurian Candidate have been pointed out as having foreshadowed the assassination. There was even speculation that Oswald, having seen both those films, was somehow persuaded to do it as a result. But it shows you how far back predictive programming goes. But this is a strange story. James Robinault, Vanity Fair, JFK staged his own murder. All right, we are joined by Bird's Nest Ratfest, all right, from Bach Precision. Thanks for joining. Tyler432, Lord Laney, Etheric Bliss, World Stage. Estevan says notifications are not showing up. I don't know why not. I recommend you go to infiniteplainsociety.com and join the Substack newsletter, and you'll get live notifications. And you want to be on it anyway, because I'll have notifications for when we do our group chats in Discord. Lucid Stream says, I watched the Christchurch live stream from the lone shooter today on Archives. Did you know that sharing it will get you in jail in the New Zealand? Where did you find it? Is it on one of my archives? I don't recall uploading anything with Christchurch. Unless you saw it on BitChute. But yeah, I heard about that. And that's the test. Christchurch was the test run for the internet lockdown to come, when they have to clamp down on mind viruses. Okay, the world in 2025. Thank you, Shed Dog. So let's take a look at the Economist cover. Okay, this one. I've seen a few people breaking it down. I haven't taken a close look at it. We'll have to go full-blown Pete Shea on it. These things are very nuanced, but at a glance, you got Saturn, you got the hourglass, the red and black colors of Saturn when combined. You've got quite a lot of Saturnian stuff here, but I'll have to look at it. But Saturn's on top, which is interesting. You got the raised fist on bottom, which is red. Anyway, very intriguing looking cover. Ominous. I mean, did you see the... It's like every other Atlantic has some kind of version of Trump with his head wound. It's just insane. World Stage says the White House Theater redundant. Yeah, they even watched Macbeth. And Macbeth, the story is somewhat part of the... Actually, it's a significant part of the subtext within the script of JFK's fake assassination. All right, let's move on here. On the archives, the website. Oh, that's where you found it. Okay. Yeah, so if you don't know the story, Brenton Tarrant mimics Anders Breivik, and he shoots up a couple of mosques to get back at the government for being pro-immigrant. And both of these are easy to debunk. You can watch them yourselves. If you're not convinced by the first one, or if it looks too real, look at the second one, where you actually see, you can find clips of the people getting up off the ground. But that's beside the point. Interestingly enough, there was a drill being performed in Christchurch that day, which involved police in full gear practicing running cars off the road and pulling the drivers out. Well, during this drill, Brenton Tarrant drives by, and they run him off the road and pull him out. And this is talked about in the media as an eerie coincidence. But they use this event to set the stage for, if some footage is so horrific and incendiary, do we have the right to, or should we be entitled to just shut down entire websites? And after that one, 4chan went down. BitChute went down. They heavily went after these sites specifically because this is where the video was being shared, because the guy was a right-winger. So it was kind of like, at the time they were talking about the gamification of mass murder. They're doing it for attention. He said shout out to PewDiePie, who was a big live streamer at the time, who was somehow associated with 4chan culture, likely because of a meme or something. But anyway, my point here is that event set the stage for clamping down on websites to stop the spread of a mind virus so it doesn't go pandemic. But I watched the video frame by frame. And the first time I watched it, it was so disturbing that the people in the room with me couldn't watch it again. And I had this bad feeling. I thought, wow, what did I just watch? Did they suddenly go real? Is this all real now? Do I have to rethink everything? And then I watched it frame by frame, and the anomalies popped up. Oh, there's already magazines on the floor. Oh, they're using squibs. Oh, these are augmented virtual reality rounds. And on, and one more point, the GoPro lens. The GoPro lens that he used was so blurry, so low quality, that it kind of gave them a bit of plausible deniability as far as the virtual elements that they added. But in a way, it's one of their tactics to kind of hide the fakery. I don't think we're on DLive right now. I've had to downsize. I had to cut DLive in order to activate these other YouTube channels. But I might go back to it very soon. I just have to upgrade on Restream, which I plan to do in a few days. So on the 22nd, I'm going to be catching up on all back orders. I'm going to order the press passes here locally, and I'm going to upgrade Restream. So we'll be back on DLive and several other platforms. XG, exactly. The shell casings that were disappearing. Lucid Stream says they messed up because you can spot many inconsistencies in what appears to be a handler on 2 different occasions. That's why they made sharing it a criminal offense. Yeah, they were trying to hide it because it was so terrible. But the second video, not the one that he recorded, but the one that was recorded by the alleged victims in Mosque number 2, there were people on the ground who were getting up. And then there's a picture outside of this guy with a Windex bottle filled up with some kind of red fluid. What could it be? And then there's this guy next to him with all these red spots, like somebody just sprayed him with theatrical blood. So we actually see them applying the special effects. Okay, moving on. I'll take a closer look at this cover later. Quite a lot here to go over, but like every Economist cover and other magazine cover, it's all part of the body of predictive programming. So we just went over this strange article from Vanity Fair about JFK and his wife faking his death 2 months before in some secretive home movie in which they actually recruited some of their Secret Service agents who later presided over the security during the parade where he was shot and killed, supposedly. What do you make of this? Was it rehearsal? There's something strange about it regardless. And also it just now came out. Now the rope around the guy's neck and the ketchup, there's something kind of Masony about this. And when you get into the JFK assassination storyline as described by James Shelby Downard, King Kill 33, he talks about the Masonic ritual of death and resurrection of Hiram Abiff and the head wound and the 3 wounds and how it pertains to JFK. And the entered apprentice, the person who gets brought into the club, is brought in with a rope around their neck. So there might be some other significance to it. This guy's name is Paul Fay. And one of the shots does look a little too close to Zapruder. So my suspicion here is we're looking at rehearsal. Elon Musk tweeted this today. And it's 11/19, which is a very 9/11-y day. 2 towers. The 2 towers. So obviously he's probably referencing Lord of the Rings, but 2 towers, twin towers, don't know why, but he posted it today at 12:21. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I don't think so. Here's Russia talking about their autonomous torpedo, Poseidon. 100 megatons. Travels up to 10,000 kilometers. Now, why this stands out to me, and you may recall this, we were talking about the stranded astronauts and how they went up in the capsule called Calypso. And Calypso is the name of the nymph who holds Odysseus hostage for about 7 years in the Odyssey. So here we're looking at the Space Odyssey and Calypso, and they're stranded, which is, okay, this is likely part of the same storyline. So what happens next? Odysseus escapes Calypso, and then he confronts the Cyclops. He blinds it, and he does escape, but the Cyclops curses Odysseus in the name of his father Poseidon. Well, here we have Poseidon.
Робот-беспилотник Посейдон. Он приближается к цели на километровой глубине со скоростью...
And I think we could easily correlate this Poseidon, this weapon, with the body of predictive programming hinting at a Kraken and the connection with Kraken in Seattle and the West Coast. But this is supposedly capable of creating a tsunami and taking out coastal cities. So we have that to look forward to. Plot twist we've all been awaiting. Lucid Stream says, body lying with shoes on, next frame shoes are off. Oh yeah, the second video is the one that really breaks it, that dispels the illusion. Lean Dion, yeah, people already playing dead before he came into the room. And there was one individual who got up ahead of time. And some of the dead people were they were doing selfies, like while they were on the floor among the dead. You could actually see them laying there taking selfies. Armin Ree says, will be funny to see how they fake a nuke in modern footage. Yeah, watch Oppenheimer in IMAX. And the film, Oppenheimer, was an IMAX film, 11 miles long, 600 pounds. 11.6. 6/11. Trump shot at 6/11. 6/11 is the execution date of McVeigh. 11.6 got them underwater. It's a reoccurring number, consistently associated with the right wing and the nuke, which is somehow the result of far fringe right wing extremists working with the Russians. Just send me an email if you're looking for a wrench. I can only do it when I'm in front of one of my other computers. Right here from Restream, I can't. But if you send me an email with a link to your YouTube name, or just comment on a video. Comment on the video below, and I'll give you a wrench. But you have to comment in the comment section. Lucid Stream started Hot Skull last night. Pandemic of mind virus. The sufferers talk gibberish. Everyone wears earmuffs for protection. Yeah, exactly. And that's where we're at right now. They transitioned us from the virus to the mind virus. Leo Pirate says Oppenheimer was a bad movie, offensively bad. Its widespread acclaim was a psyop. Yeah, it was rather dull in a lot of ways, but I think it had a very important place in the meta script, and they had to release it at this time. And it also told me something. When I saw that it was being prepared, something about the Nolans, Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan, their movies, and how they tie into the big story. But it told me that they're not going to nuke us until after the movie comes out, obviously. But that the movie would provide all the visuals and all of the, I guess, it's like a PSA, the education the public needs. Like a lot of these movies are just PSAs. This is the threat. This is what it will do. And you can't separate Oppenheimer from Barbie. They came out at the same time. There's a hashtag Barbieheimer. They're all part of the same meta-narrative. It's a story. And the nuke is basically a god. It's a god construct. It's a war god. And then Godzilla comes out, and Godzilla is a metaphor for the nuke. But it's all storytelling. This is the pageantry. This is the manipulation of the masses through hyperstition. Leo Pirate, it reminded American audiences of the importance of the nuke. Well, exactly. It was a reminder that this is the threat. This is what it's going to look like. And one consistent pattern is, and we see this with every single PSYOP, is you have drills, attending every PSYOP that mirror what happens. And then you have movies that give you the visuals so that you can imagine what it is that you're not actually physically seeing. Roxy says, what do you think about the JFK Home movie? I'm still reeling from it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know what to make of it. I just came across it today. It's a new story. I haven't figured out what it means. So I thought I have to go live tonight and talk about Jackie Kennedy directing a murder movie where JFK is covered in ketchup 2 months before he gets assassinated. And some of the scenes are reminiscent of Zapruder's work. Although we can't give Abraham Zapruder credit for Stanley Kubrick's work. Zapruder is really just a character in this play. Again, if you want wrenches, just comment in the comments section and I can go through all at once. It's very easy, but in the live chats, it's kind of tricky because I have to scroll. And we get so many comments now. Our numbers have gone up significantly. In fact, let's take a look here. Now, we're still early in the evening, but it looks like we're up to a little bit over 100 or so. It'll go up, but we're trying to awaken the Kraken here. We want to consolidate all of our old listeners. Retroactive drill for JFK? Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. It seems like morbid, like maybe they were doing a rehearsal, and then so they get the Secret Service agent, hey, can you help us make this home movie where I'm going to pretend to kill the president? And he participates, and they dump ketchup on the body, and she's filming it. It could have been at that point where they had to recruit this guy into it. Hey, you're going to be the head of security on 11/22, and we're going to basically do this and pretend like it's real. Does anybody here think JFK was really shot on that day? All the conspiracy theorists get it wrong. It was as fake as Trump's ear wound. Leo Pirate says, RFK Jr. constantly being associated with Trump, as well as Reagan, and some headlines with Garfield. I think it's priming the audience for what's coming. I've thought so for some time. I thought maybe the whole QAnon obsession with JFK, and they do worship him and pray to him, and they do believe he was the second coming of Christ and he's still alive. I thought perhaps they're just flooding the zone with JFK stuff in order to make this association so when they JFK Trump, it hits the same way. What's up, Tyler? Yes, if you want to wrench, comment in the comments section below, and I'll handle it after the live stream. Roxy said, well, I did think he was shot. The enlightened interpretation of it is because it has all the hallmarks of everything else, predictive programming, concurrent programming, eerie coincidences, that it's a hoax. In fact, Dr. Strangelove was released on 11/22/63. The connections between the JFK assassination date and Kubrick, between Kubrick and JFK, are voluminous, and it goes through all of his movies. In fact, right now, I'm watching Dr. Sleep, which is a Stephen King. It's the sequel to The Shining. And there's like Jay Dyer, for example. Jay Dyer is well known for this documentary called Room 237. And it's about how Kubrick faked the moon landing, and he's signaling to everybody, hey guys, I did this, I feel bad, you should know, or something. But now, the problem with that whole proposition is that the movie The Shining doesn't only foreshadow what happened on the fake moon stage, but it also has tons of predictive programming for 9/11. In fact, there's more stuff for 9/11 built into The Shining than there is for Apollo 11. So, and it's a consistent thing with all of his movies. But I'm watching the sequel, and it has this psychic child named Abra. They use the word abracadabra, which is a very occult thing if you dig into it. But the child is like psychically predicting 9/11. So think about it. The Shining 1 has predicted programming for a psyop that was going to happen in a couple of decades. The Shining Part 2 has a character that actually foreshadows, or rather has a vision of this incoming event. Angst G says, do you think Marilyn Monroe's death was hoax as well? She seems to be a part of the Kennedy vaudeville circuit, 100%. And I hadn't thought that the case until I was talking to Jurassic Liars about Marilyn Manson, who has an album coming out on 11/22 called One Assassination Under God. And his video Coma White is the one where he plays JFK being assassinated. And the music videos about the third Jesus, JFK being the second coming. So it's about JFK Jr., which is a really strange thing, considering the QAnoners are obsessed with this notion. But the movie, or rather the video, the music video Coma White was delayed by MTV because JFK Jr. crashed and died. Very unusual connection. But Marilyn Manson's name is derived from Charles Manson and Marilyn Monroe, and Marilyn Monroe's death was 8/4, which also has a great deal of significance to this head wound narrative as it pertains to Trump. And it goes deep. I mean, Trump goes back to Butler 84 days after he was shot, gives his moment of silence speech at 6/11. Somebody sings Ave Maria, the Riddler song. And the Riddler looks just like Thomas Crooks, who died at 6/11, looks just like Thomas Crooks, who is described by the media as an enigma, which happens to be the Riddler's name, Edward Enigma. Thank you for the krill, Phil LeBlanc. Appreciate your support here and participation. Robin Farrell says, Zapruder film was shown for the first time on the Geraldo Rivera show 12 years after the fact. Dick Gregory is one of the guests. They had 12 years to create the conspiracy psyop. Yeah, that's a long time. And Dick Gregory is one of the individuals who helped spread this idea that Trump is a twin. It's a no-brainer. He's got body doubles. But does he have a twin? Jurassic Liar says, you want me to call in? Yeah, why don't you call in? It's been a minute. 505-510-4226. We can talk about recent developments. I'm talking about this JFK staging his own death 2 months before. Here's a picture of Tony Soprano at the end of season 1 with an ear wound after an assassination attempt fails. And he's holding a glass of orange juice, which kind of ties into the orange man Trump. So many gullible people. Fact check. Did these nuts predict Trump having dinner with RFK? So there's a fact check. Did this painting in 1721 predict RFK and Trump and Michael Johnson having dinner? No. Google reverse image search shows no image of it having existed prior to the photo of Trump. And I just have to point out that Q people are auto believers. MAGA are auto believers when it comes to their own propaganda. In other words, they don't even think about it. They just believe it. It's pretty sad. Another great video here about the Paul Tyson fight where Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, dude, this is Jurassic.
Hey, what's up, Jurassic?
Hey, I haven't called in because my vocal cords are all completely messed up, man. And I can barely do my live stream. That's why I didn't call in for a while.
Well, I recall that you had said that Trump would win, and this would totally infuriate the other side. And we might be looking at that Civil War movies scenario. You still think that's the case? I mean, you kind of called it.
Well, I knew he would win, but I wasn't so sure about that, about the, like the insurrection type deal with the Democrats doing it. But that would be the common sense thought about it.
Right.
But notice how it's too calm. Obviously, they're up to something. You know what I mean? And could they start World War III? Because this is what I was saying also, was that they could start World War III ahead of the inauguration and somehow, you know, have Trump inauguration be either delayed or maybe not even happen. I don't know what they're going to do. These people are nuts, you know what I mean? So we can never figure out every step they make, you know. We can just kind of guess the outcome, you know.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Jessica Lynn says Trump was shown with orange soda on the plane. Yeah, this Trump thing with the mob boss connection goes deep because you got Tony Soprano with the orange juice, which calls back to Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather, who has the oranges fall when he gets shot at, and then of course Trump with the orange face paint. But other recent events. What about Marilyn Monroe? Somebody's asking. You're convinced, or rather, you believe that she's a death faker?
Well, I mean, the fact that she was involved with JFK and RFK, you know, supposed, you know, flings or whatever the creature was having. But Marilyn Monroe, born on, I mean, I forget when she was born now. I can't remember now. But I know she died on 8/4, which is, you know, the day Trump's going to get his head wound, which is also Obama's birthday. But Marilyn Monroe kind of connects with this, that creature, Meghan Markle. That's the only reason that creature's in the news, is because of the creature's birthday, and you know, is August 4th. So it's got the MM, just like Marilyn Monroe had the MM, you know. So there's something going on with that.
And did you hear my mention? Marilyn Manson has an album coming out on 11/22, and it says "One Assassination Under God," and one of the themes in his music has been the Kennedys and the assassination theme. So I kind of have my eye on that particular character, but you're the one who alerted me to the Marilyn Monroe 8/4 death date connection.
Right, and also Marilyn Manson is 55 and Satan equals 55. That's why, you know, that's another reason why they're using him right now to put out that album for Trump. Because Trump, everything to do with Satan has to do with Elvis and Trump, because Trump is the image of the Antichrist, because Elvis is the Antichrist, Trump is the Antichrist in the flesh. And everything to do with Satan has to do with Elvis, but also with Trump, because Trump was 55 years old when 9/11 happened. Obama was 55 years old when Trump got elected, and when Trump was made president, he was still 55, Obama. So it's all about the Satan connection, you know what I mean? And that's also why the 55th Super Bowl had that idiot, The Weeknd, who's all about the head wound.
Oh, Abel. His name is Abel, like Abe Lincoln, or Cain and Abel, and the head wound stuff. And his birthday's 2/16, or February 16th,
right,
which obviously correlates to the 216th day. And, you know, interestingly, I was watching this movie called Focus with Will Smith, and in the movie, they're trying to convince this guy to bet on the number 55. And in order to convince him, he speaks Mandarin. So they're playing the song Sympathy for the Devil, because Wu in Mandarin means 5. And so throughout the song, Mick Jagger sings woo woo 124 times. So it's 55, 55. And they mention it. And I'm thinking that's weird, because JL had said that 55 has the numerical equivalent of the devil.
Satan. Yeah.
Satan.
SATAN equals 55. Yeah. And Elvis turned 55 years old in the year 1990. And in 1990, the Super Bowl, because Elvis turned 55 that year, the Super Bowl was the score was 55-10, and Satan equals 55, reduced numbers 10, because 5 plus 5 is 10. So Satan equals 55-10. The year Elvis turned 55, that was the score of the Super Bowl. Okay, and you know the Super Bowl is the trophy, because the Vince Lombardi trophy is Vince Lombardi was born on 6/11. So the trophy is 6/11. And who won that? Who won it? It was the 49ers. The 49ers, the quarterback is Joe Montana. Joe Montana is born on June 11th.
I didn't know that. Now, just to point out where Trump's now, he's going to be president number 47. The 47th Super Bowl was the blackout. That's the one where it blacked out for 33 minutes. Not sure what that means, but it seems like foreshadowing. And while Tyson was fighting Paul over where Trump was at. He was hanging out with Sylvester Stallone. And Stallone references Rocky, where he's in this gym that was formerly a church, and it's called Resurrection AC. And so I'm thinking, okay, I remember you brought this up before, Resurrection AC Athletic Center, but
Antichrist, yeah.
Antichrist. And Trump had long been sending pictures of himself out there on Twitter as Rocky. But in his speech, Sylvester Stallone compares Trump to both George Washington, and he says, quote, that he's a mythical figure, that he doesn't exist. And then he compares Rocky to Jesus. So anyway, I don't know what you make of it, but...
Well, that makes sense because, the father of our country, they're connecting the father of the son because George Washington is the father of the country, get it? So
okay.
That's the reason yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And it's funny what he says here. He's like, we're in the presence of a mythical character. I love mythology, but this individual does not exist. Nobody could have pulled off what he's pulled off. But he says that the camera goes from Jesus to Rocky and shows he's a chosen one. So again, he goes from Rocky to Jesus to George Washington. So
total predictive program. But as far as your Super Bowl connection with the 47 Super Bowl, I believe Seattle was actually in that Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. And the only Super Bowl Seattle won was the next year, which was the 48th Super Bowl. So it's going to be 48 years from the day Seattle slew on the Triple Crown on June 11, 1977, to next year, June 11th. It's going to be exactly 48 years. And the 48th Super Bowl is the only Super Bowl that Seattle won. And the 47th Super Bowl was the blackout one, you said, right?
Correct.
And that Seattle lost that one. And Elvis is 47 years dead now. So it's all about the 47. 47 years dead he's been. And Trump just got elected the 47. So that's what they were waiting for, was the 47 connection.
Well, I heard some rumor today or some intimation by someone in Russia about how the nuke might hit us before Christmas. And there's this movie that just dropped by Francis Ford Coppola, and it's called Megalopolis. It has this Trump-like character, all kinds of Trump stuff in there. Has the assassination 3 days later, resurrects. But one of the things about this movie, Megalopolis, is that on Christmas, which they're celebrating as Saturnalia, Elvis is performing, and he's singing America the Beautiful, the song that they sang at Trump's inauguration in 2017. So you have this Trump, and he's wrapped in an American flag. So you got Elvis in a flag singing Trump's inauguration song on Christmas. I mean, it's strange, but it's all there.
Yeah, and Christmas is the Christ connection, of course, with Santa being Satan. But what's also in that movie, because I got this from you, was that nut job. What's his name? That other actor that was hung upside down the cross in there.
Oh yes, Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, Shia LaBeouf. That idiot is born on June 11th.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
And he's hanging upside down in front of the $100 bill. And in fact, just today in my Gilded server, Leo Pirate put together a compilation of predictive programming for Seattle connected with the $100 bill. Like, just as an example, Sonic the Hedgehog is dropping dynamite into the sewer, and then it blows up, water coming out of Seattle. He jumps out of the Space Needle, and he's paid in $100 bills. There's a lot of connections between the $100 bill and this reset theme, but specifically EMP and Seattle.
Well, the word 100, just by itself without the one, but just 100 equals almost exactly the same as Lucifer or the king. So the king or Lucifer are very close in to each other. It's only like one number off, but every number is the same, 3 out of the 4 numbers. So that's a big correlation with the word 100, but not 100.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, and then in like 2019, they put like $100 million into the Space Needle and the area around it. And next to the Space Needle, you had the Experience Music Project, EMP, and then Chris Cornell's statue nearby. Association there would be the Black Hole Sun. But the staging for whatever's going to come is obviously and consistently Seattle. And now we have this Poseidon nuke, Beast from the Sea, being waved at us.
Someone's telling me I was wrong about the Super Bowl being Seattle being the 47th. I don't know. You know what? It doesn't matter anyway. But the Blackout Bowl was the 47. I know that. But the 48 Super Bowl was definitely won by Seattle. That one's for sure. I might have been wrong about them being in the 47.
And
But I thought they were.
it was a 33-minute blackout, and it's notable for a few reasons because again the association with the number 47 in this particular election, but also at that time Obama was president, and that very year there was a movie called American Blackout where Obama has a cameo talking about how you need to listen to the media and get your information from the authoritative sources. And I thought, well, that's got to be foreshadowing for right now. And that's what we're waiting on. And then just now on Netflix is this movie called Black Canary, where this Putin-looking bad guy releases a digital nuke to put us into a dark age.
Yeah, and yeah, you know what? Yeah, and you've been talking about the Reagan stuff, right? Yeah, everything to do with the Reagan shooting had to do with Trump. You know that. You've been through it 100 times with the connection.
Oh, yeah, anything Reagan, a lot of connections there. The whole Hinkle Jr. shooting Reagan inspired by De Niro's character in Taxi Driver. Like, it makes me think that Martin Scorsese probably directed the Reagan shooting. Like, at this point, because when you see all these, like, movies that are obviously perfectly connected with the PSYOP, I think these Hollywood directors are being recruited. Like, I think James Cameron was likely behind filming Terry Nichols, Rodney King, and the Cop City riots. Like, I think you can make these connections pretty strongly these days.
Just real quick for the people who've never seen my videos, Trump was elected when he was 70 years old, 7 months, 7 days. Not elected, he became president, right? The day he became president on 1/20/2017, he was 70 years, 7 months, 7 days, right? It's like the 777, right? And from that day when he turned 70, and then he turned 78 this year, and he was elected this year, and he's going to become president at the age of 78 still, okay? So what does that make him? Between 70 and 78, if you add up all the numbers in between, like 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78 equals 666.
That's interesting. And didn't Reagan live at 666 something Boulevard?
St. Cloud. Yeah. And they changed it to 668. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was 666 in Bel Air. Yeah.
Wow. There's a lot here. I mean, okay, for example, Taxi Driver was in the series The Boys. They're watching Taxi Driver. And the season finale, season 4, was Assassination Run, where the Trump-like character has blood on his face after there's an assassination attempt or somebody gets shot. And the TV series changed the title Assassination Run because it looks so much like what happened to Trump. I mean, that's insane to me that they deliberately make these connections. But within it, you have Taxi Driver, which has the whole story of the assassin. I mean, it goes so deep here, but
you've been making really good connections with the Trump on the cover of those magazines with like the ear and the head wound stuff.
Oh, the Atlantic. And the Atlantic, I have that one pinned on Twitter because that is damning. That shows it the exact spot. And then the follow-up one, it says Trump won, now what? And this next one, it looks pretty much not his ear, but the whole side of his head.
Yeah, that's why I was saying those two. Yeah, you got that one, down packed right there. Man, there was the Tim McVeigh. Make sure that you always say that Timothy McVeigh was 33 because you said it's always 6'11", but he was also 33.
That's right, and that matters because he's the domestic violent extremist. He's 33. He's executed on 6/11, and then 90 days later, Muhammad Atta, who was 33, the lead hijacker. Another 33-year-old. I mean, I say quarantine the 33-year-olds. And yeah, so he represents the Timothy McVeigh from the external threat. So you have the 9/11, 6/11. It's the inversion, but it's the same basic storyline.
Well, no, it mattered. The reason I brought that up is because Trump got his head clipped. I mean, his ear clipped at 6/11:33.
Oh, that's
the
right.
Time was 6/11:33.
That's right. Trump's head wound was at 6:11 p.m. and 33 seconds. Fascinating.
And then he goes back 84 days later to Butler, Pennsylvania. BP is 216, BMP is 2 and 16, and 84 days later he goes back there, does a moment of silence at 6/11 and mentions 12 weeks, He goes, right now at 6:11 and 12 weeks to this minute, we're going to have a moment of silence. 12 weeks is 84 days. So he basically mentions my two predictions.
He did.
6:11 was, yeah.
He did. 611 and
yeah.
84. And then they sing the song Ave Maria, which is what the Riddler was singing. And the Riddler looks just like the shooter. And the Riddler has the name Enigma, and the shooter's been called an Enigma. So you have another Batman connection to that moment of silence. But 611:33, that's a direct callback.
I mean, it is completely loaded, that shooting and him going back there. But when you were talking about the Mike Tyson, that's one of the reasons why I called in. So real quick, let me just spout this real quick. So Mike Tyson has the MT, okay, which is his initials. MT equals 33. M and T, 13th letter and 20th letter, okay? So it's MT. And Elvis, he was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, which is TM, which is 33, but he moved to MT, which is Memphis, Tennessee. That's where he lived and died later. So he went from TM to the MT because his tomb is empty, get it? But what I'm trying to say is he's got the same initials as Mike Tyson, right? And then he was going up against Jake Paul, right? And they were calling it Tyson Paul and the fight. And it's TP, which is 216, the initials T and P. And Jake Paul, his initials are JP, which is 10 and 16. And that's like 116, 611 again. But what I was trying to tell you is that everything with that fight was connected to the 611 because it was even on 11:15, the fight. 11:15 is 11 plus 1 and 5 is 6. So again, it's the 6:11, 11:6 connection. And do you know when his last fight was? Mike Tyson?
When?
His last professional fight?
No, I knew it was like in 2020, but what was the date?
When was Mike Tyson's last professional fight?
According to Rolling
Hold
Stone,
Hold on. Was Mike Tyson's last professional fight on June 11th, 2005?
According to Yahoo Sports, when was Mike Tyson's last professional fight? It's been 24 years since Mike Tyson's last professional fight, which took place on June 11th, 2005, against...
Okay.
So he went up against some guy named Kevin McBride, and I don't remember what happened, but it was June 11th, right?
6/11/05.
You're not going to believe it. Yeah, you're not going to believe it. Did you know that Mike Tyson was married?
No, I did not.
I didn't either. I never heard that he was married recently. I knew he was married to some actress years ago, but I had no idea he was married. So I come to find out look at this. Who's his wife? Hold on. Who's Mike Tyson's wife? It's Lakeia Spicer. Let's see if they say, when was Lakeia Spicer born?
Lakeia Spicer was born on June 11th, 1977.
She was born on the day Seattle Slew won the Triple Crown.
77. I see that. Okay.
Can you believe that?
Now, let me just bring this up really quick. So, Trump is shot. New York Post has Trump shot, where his arm is raised, the infamous image. And we made the connection that this looks exactly like Braveheart. This is New York Post. So now, 84 days later, he's back, and they put a different picture of him, and it says Braveheart. So they call him Braveheart. Now, if you compare the fist-raised photo of Trump to the Braveheart movie cover, it's identical. And then one step further, if you look at his Truth Social avatar, Trump has the Braveheart face paint. So you hear of multiple connections to Braveheart, but it's referenced in the headline when he returned 84 days later. So again, this is the merging of our movies and our news, archetypal images, powerful images. It's all just to recall the same feelings and everything else.
And you know the connection with him doing the fist pump, and what was he saying? Do you remember?
Fight, 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 which I take to mean 666. I mean, what do you think?
Right. FFF, right? But that's not why he did it. He did it, besides the FFF being 666, but that's not what it is. It was he was referencing Gabby Giffords because Gabby Giffords got the head wound, and that was her phrase after she got the head wound, which was fight, fight, fight.
Okay, that's right. That's right. And she was shot, was that on Elvis's birthday?
Yeah, exactly. In 2011, he was shot on Elvis's birthday, and that and she was shot in Tucson, Arizona, which is the 48th state, and which is like the 8-4 backwards. But he was on Elvis's birthday in 2011, and on that same day, you had the Beast quake in Seattle. The same day.
Okay, that's intriguing. Unbelievable. I went out. I went out to a Trump rally on Halloween that was here, and I was telling people that 7/13 was a hoax, that nobody died, and it was fake. And these people are under a spell. Nobody would confront me. Nobody would talk. Nobody would refute it. But they would just huddle together and laugh nervously. But I just confronted the MAGA cult. And it is certainly a cult. I think they worship this man. It's a cult of personality. And if there is a candidate for Antichrist, it's got to be Trump. For as much as his followers think that he is Christ. And he's really playing this up. Think about it. He's playing up that 6:11 p.m. when he was shot ties in to Ephesians 6:11, the armor of God. What does that say about these people who are performing these psyops, who are knowingly messing with the religious beliefs of their followers?
Yeah, and what's sad is that these people, you know why? See, they put Obama as he was like the number one candidate to be the Antichrist according to the YouTube, and that's what's sad is a lot of people have gotten on that bandwagon instead of Trump, and that's why they can't see it because I don't understand the theory of Obama being the Antichrist, because once Trump stepped in, I knew it was him right away. But because the Antichrist is going to fool the Christians. No Christian is going to follow Barack Hussein Obama. That's why it makes no sense.
No, and on this Obama thing, so there are two recent examples of predictive programming for Trump's head wound thing. One of them is A Man in Full, where Charlie Coker's based on Trump, and the other one is Megalopolis, where Caesar is based on Trump. And interestingly enough, in A Man in Full, it's the mayor of Chicago that sets up the Trump character for his downfall and ends up with him dead. And that character is obviously based on Obama. In Megalopolis, it's the mayor who puts out the hit on the Trump character and says, "See you in 3 days," and then he gets killed, or rather shot, and then he resurrects. But anyway, in both movies, you have this Obama-like character who is a mayor who is behind the takedown of the Trump character.
Oh, that's interesting, because the old mayor, I'm not sure who the mayor is of Chicago now, but that creature, lesbian Lightfoot, Lori Lightfoot, what is the creature's name? I forget. Lori Lightfoot is born on August 4th, that mayor of Chicago.
Oh, interesting. Another 8-4. And by the way, so I say, we use the word here, I say Antichrist very loosely. I know there are biblical scholars, but at this point, we're talking about how they're communicating to the masses, and it's almost oversimplified in certain ways, but the character Damien Thorne contains a lot of predictive programming for Trump. And there's a character in the Batman Caped Crusader series named Rupert Thorne, who's very Trump-like. And in the season finale, Batman throws a bladed boomerang, and cuts his right ear. So that's an obvious Trump connection. Rupert Thorne, Trump-ish guy, getting his ear clipped. Well, after that season finale, Amazon decides to purchase the second season on August 4th. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's amazing. It's connection after connection, man.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to come up with some, you don't even know what to say. You become speechless after a while with all the connections.
Right. Well, it's just very intriguing and undeniable, but it's a story that if you're not looking at it correctly, if you're taking the news literally, you aren't going to be able to see it. And so it's like I appreciate you and your chat members that come in here and add to our sum total of information because this is a big picture.
Yeah, you know what? And man, like I said, I know that you know that you don't believe, the same things I believe, but we got to be respectful to each other as long as you're being respectful to me. Anyway, but I do tell the truth, that you don't believe, but that's okay.
Well, hey, you've been extremely vindicated. The 6/11/33, and then he mentions 12 weeks. Like this is not coincidence. This is not anything more than some script that is so outside of the confines of just the news and the movies as being separate. This is a dead giveaway that we're confronting a worldwide deception, and we're examining the architecture of deception here, and it's too big for
And
most
just
people. Go ahead.
last thing, can you put my channel, the right channel, as the thing? I don't know how to do it. Put it in as a link. And just real quick, let me say that my two predictions is June 11th, Washington State gets struck on June 11th. Most likely Seattle will be ground zero, but it's going to take out probably the whole, the whole side. Oh, and by the way, the Elvis's head, it's going to be like two head wounds because Elvis's head is the Washington State, right? So you have that Washington State event June 11th, and then Trump gets his head wound in Ohio on August 4th. So that's it. I mean, I appreciate it.
All right. I mean, we could go on for hours on this stuff. You get into Trump and one more thing, actually, really quick here. I mentioned the character Caesar in Megalopolis, who's like a Trump stand-in. That same actor is the main character in White Noise, which has the nuke-like event in Ohio, and that happens to be 42 miles from Butler. So you have the head wound and the nuke, 42 miles apart, and both of the movie representations of Trump are featured in White Noise and Megalopolis, the same actor. So just
and White Noise, the original White Noise, right? Remember, it was the Elvis connection in that one.
That's the one I still need to watch, and I still need to watch John Carpenter's Elvis movie as well. So thanks for the reminders there. But call back anytime.
All right, brother. Take care.
Okay, so I put a link to his channel below. It's at Jurassic Liars Elvis Seattle 611. Whatever you think about the information, you test it yourself. We've been watching this story unfold, and then on 7/13, this thing happens with Trump, and what do you know? It's at 6/11. Like, wow, okay, that's strange. 6/11/33 even, and the connection to McVeigh is hugely significant because he was radicalized at Waco, and the attack in the Oklahoma City, that governmental building, was on the anniversary of Waco. At Waco, you had the 33-year-old Dave Koresh incinerated. And then Trump's on trial last April 19th, and Maxwell Azarello sets himself on fire outside of the courthouse. And these are all connected. They're all part of one continuous story. What's the name of John Carpenter's Elvis movie? I really like some John Carpenter's work. He does some. He did They Live. It's just called Elvis, 1979. Just called Elvis, the movie. So the basic idea here is that and we can look at this all the time. Look at various pop stars or celebrities, how they seem to be some kind of idols, like Barbie. I would contend that Barbie is the whore of Babylon, that she is the goddess as defined by the Thelemic cult, that they actually worship the Scarlet Woman, Marjorie Cameron, the Babylon working. Yeah, that's what Barbie represents. And that's why she was introduced through Margot Robbie. So Margot Robbie is, in a sense, an avatar. And this is idol worship. And when we're looking at Elvis, we're looking at something similar, something analogous to this, where he is the avatar or an idol through which the public is unwittingly worshiping the devil. I mean, basically, that's it. What are you giving your energy to? And this is something we got into yesterday. We started talking about sigil magic and the theory behind it and the occult undertones to various psyops. Well, beyond just sigils, when you look at magical ritual, various magical philosophies, you do have idols and images of various gods and entities. and that you can sort of replace them. It's called syncretism, like Santeria, where the Afro-Caribbean religion and its gods are worshipped through the images of Catholic saints. So yeah, you could very well be unwittingly paying homage, sacrificing, worshipping, adulating something other than the pop star on the screen. On the black cube altar, your black mirror. Okay, let's move on. We started talking about Donald Trump, his body double. What does that look like to you? Does anybody think this is a mask? Does he move like the Trump as you remember Trump? Who does that even look like? That does not look like Trump. It's not even a good mask. Yeah, Whore of Barbulon. And I did watch that movie in the theater. I took notes. And scene by scene, the analysis is that what you're really seeing is the Babylon working. That's what you were actually saying, which was really about this idea of Babylon meaning gate to the gods, and that the priestess, the Scarlet Woman, is a god through which the extraterrestrials or the interdimensionals, the energies of the new aeon, would be released into the world. And it would be this major paradigm shift. And the Barbie feminism kind of scratches the surface of this. If you watch the beginning of the movie, there's the monolith. Stanley Kubrick, 2001, it's the monolith, but there's little girls playing with their dolls. But instead of the monolith, it's Barbie, a giant Barbie. And she looks down approvingly, giving her little 666 with her hands, raising her glasses and winking as the little girls bash the heads of their babies on the rocks because they don't want to be mothers. So that sort of sets the tone for the whole movie, but it's really about the advent of, or the introduction of, this new version of the goddess energy for the new age. Not Shock says post-burn victim Trump. Yeah, he looks like, who's it? Dave? The character that was, there's a real person named Dave that was friends with Michael Jackson. After Michael Jackson faked his death, he came back as Dave wearing a mask that looks like this. But no, I don't think that's Trump. I don't know who it is. It's a body double. No way that's him. Okay, let's get back on. I was going to ask Jurassic what he thought about the JFK home movie that Jackie Kennedy made, where they fake killed JFK 2 months before. I mean, how weird is that? If you want links to anything that I talk about, you just go to minds.com/infiniteplane-society. I want to reiterate this, since now we're talking about Russia nuking us. How severe is the ISS leak? U.S. and Russia clash on issue just a few days ago. And the story is that there is a leak on the Russian side, so the Americans have put some kind of a hatch between them in case the other guys run out of air. Mission STS-116. The U.S. and Russians don't have a common understanding of what the root cause is or the severity of the leaks. So they're kind of fighting over it. American Father says, what? I got to know about the Jackie JFK video. Yeah, this is good. I woke up and I was like, what am I going to talk about today? There haven't been any big psyops in the last couple of days. I guess we'll talk about RFK eating a Big Mac and then dipping. And then I come across this. This story came out in the Vanity Fair. It's called JFK Staged His Own Murder in a James Bond-inspired spy film 2 months before his assassination by James Robinault. An untold tale, never-before-seen photos of a 1963 home movie directed by Jackie Kennedy at the Hammersmith farm. Now, the long and short of it, they made a movie. They recruited some of their Secret Service guys, one of whom was directing the agents on 11/22. And in it, JFK, quote, suddenly clutches his chest and falls as if hit by bullets. And in an absurd touch, those behind him nonchalantly step over his body. In amateur fashion, they used Heinz ketchup. Why is that amateur? Heinz? What should they have used? What brand of ketchup should they have used? and on his friend Red Faye to make it appear as though they were bleeding. And they're playing with guns. Scenes where the Countess and Faye drop a pistol in a bag that is surreptitiously spirited away. In the footage, Jackie carries the bag with a pistol, and she's shown directing and acting in the movie. So if you haven't read this or come across this before, you can get the link below if you want to bookmark it, or go to minds.com/Infinite Plane Society. One of the participants commented on how it seemed like maybe JFK had a premonition. It says Jackie was enamored of the arts, especially the visual arts. While in college, she attended Smith's junior year study abroad in post-war Paris. It was an unusual request, says Roy Kellerman, who was later in charge of the agents in Dallas, riding in the limousine in the front passenger seat. But at one point, Jackie asked for them to go to the main house and run in, acting as though they just heard shots. When they did, they found JFK on the floor covered in ketchup. Like, how strange is that? Okay, let's continue here. I'm trying to find the video. I don't know if they've released it or if it's simply a few screenshots. It's a 1963 home movie. I think that it's going to be released, but as of right now, according to this article, it's a silent motion picture film. I think you can get it at the JFK Home Library. Okay, here we are, jfklibrary.org. I believe I found it. Okay, it's in the archives. Newport, September 1963. Silent motion picture containing footage of JFK's family during their weekend. Okay, this is the one. This is the one. 16 millimeter. Let's go ahead and peruse this footage. Silent motion picture containing footage. So I'm going to let it just play in the background silently. With President Kennedy, our First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, Carolyn Kennedy, JFK Jr. That would be him right there playing with the tractor. The QAnoners are going to go crazy over this. It's in the public domain, so I may just upload it onto my channel if it's any good. But I want to see if I can find any material from the fake death. Now, I don't think it's a coincidence. The date they filmed it, maybe it has some astrological significance, the 22nd of September, the equinox, and then he gets shot as we enter into Sagittarius. Okay, well, I'll put a link, and this warrants further investigation. Hark says, William Cooper had a theory that the driver shot JFK and Jackie ran to the trunk to ditch the gun. There's another interpretation that Jackie was pulling the squib and that she was getting the squib can, and that there may have been multiple shots. Like, I would say the most up-to-date research on the JFK assassination is that it was a movie and that nobody was actually shot or killed. And it shouldn't be controversial in light of all of the various psyops that followed. And I think what is a dead giveaway would even be the role of Stanley Kubrick. If Stanley Kubrick's involved, it's fake. 9/11, 2020, JFK, Apollo 11, and who knows what else, he has had his hands in. And it's not just Kubrick. It's not like he's the mastermind, but rather he's just one example of what we would call meta-scripters. Leo Pirate says, William Cooper on Hour of the Time actually mentioned a lot of the King 33 info. Yeah, there's a few places where William Cooper really nails it. I think that he broke down the space program psyop almost better than anybody. I think until us, and we just have more information. But Alex Jones never went there. Euphoria star Agnes Cloud dead at 25, life imitating art. Agnes Cloud vowed to never portray rapper legend Mac Miller, and then fans react to eerie similarities. This just showed up on my feed. It's actually an old tweet, but this is when I started to use the expression that psyops imitate art, that the structure of media is such that everything that we experience as a psyop, every instance of fake news that becomes part of our fake shared history, is indeed foreshadowed. That it's a literary technique. It's just how they make good movies. It's how they program us, condition us. It's how they advertise ideas long in advance. But the least likely conclusion is that predictive programming is some kind of mysterious phenomenon. So I'm glad that we've moved past all of that. Okay, Synchromorpheus posted this in Gilded today. The prosecution in the Daniel Penny trial rests its case on Monday in New York City. The same day this happened. 3 people killed in New York, 3 locations. We're still looking at the record. There's a real question here as to why he was out on the streets, says Mayor Eric Adams. Again, Mayor Eric Adams, interesting character in the storyline, but listen to this. He's saying he was sentenced a few months ago, and there's a real question that we need to look into as to why he was out on the streets. He had some severe mental issues. So we're talking about Jordan Neely, who had mental issues, and he's been put out on the loose. And it ties in to this story, to the Joker story, and the significance of the Joker in the subways. Because again, Jordan Neely was in the subway. I've been saying that Joker represents the underclass, those who fall through the cracks, victims of society. This has been reiterated by the Riddler and by Frank James, who did the shooting when Batman came out, the Prophet of Doom. Also sending messages to Eric Adams about the lack of adequate care for the mentally ill. And here's what Arthur Fleck, a.k.a. Joker, said right before he shoots Robert De Niro, the Murray Franklin character. What do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash? You get what you effing deserve. And then he shoots the guy. So the Joker connection here is highly significant. Joker shoots De Niro's character. The Joker movie was based on Taxi Driver, where De Niro is the presidential assassin. So you have the assassin and the assassinated played by De Niro in both these instances. De Niro as Travis Bickle was the inspiration for John Hinckley Jr., who even dressed like him. So John Hinckley shoots Reagan, and James Brady, who again died 33 years later on 8/4, but he bases his whole persona off of De Niro, off this Joker character. So in other words, you could look at it as Hinckley represents the Joker archetype, the mentally ill, and he was mentally ill. So this Joker connection to all the shooters is something that we've talked about. The Thomas Crooks, not necessarily Joker, but Riddler. So it's the same kind of thing. The underserved, the mentally ill, the person that represents the victim of society striking back, the anti-hero. But they're all very much related. Think about the Joker shooter, James Holmes, mentally ill. Always the same, mentally ill. We could add to it the shooter Ryan Routh laughed like the Joker. We could even connect the guy who set himself on fire outside the courthouse to the Joker narrative. But anyway, incidentally, the New York City stabbing suspect Ramon Rivera was wearing a shirt with the word King and a crown on it, possibly a reference to Rodney King. Anyway, we're looking at this Daniel Penny story, and there's this connection between Daniel Penny, his death, the George Floyd thing, and the Rodney King thing, which was brought back with the Terry Nichols. One of the things that we do on this channel is we examine all of the various psychological operations as though, or with the understanding that they all exist within the same fictional universe and they reference each other. 1900 says, remember when Bob Saget predicted his own death and how it happened? Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's continue here. The failings of the mental health system cited as the ultimate cause of Jordan Neely's death. Quote, we'll never know if he would have followed through on the threats that he made, but, quote, Gotham's broken mental health system and loony leftism should be on trial, not Daniel Penny. So here we have a direct connection in this article to the Jordan Neely event and Gotham, Joker, Batman, and the significance of the subway where the killing happened. Because if you recall, Joker begins in a subway. He shoots some rich guys, kill the rich is one of the themes, the Marxist class warfare thing. Batman is privileged, he's rich. In the Batman, it starts off in a subway and he beats up a bunch of jokers in the subway. The subway represents the underclass. So Daniel Penny strangling the mentally ill guy that was harassing people was seen as a hero by the right. Around that time, MTG said that it was like Gotham and they needed some vigilantes like Batman. So Daniel Penny's been heralded as a hero for basically Derek Chauvining somebody. I mean, it was a George Floyd-esque event. I think that's why his name is Jordan Neely. I think it's a reference to the kneeling. But we examine this story in depth, and it's all contrived and fake. Daniel Penny's character is right out of a Jordan Peele movie called Nope. Get Out. Nope was inspired by the George Floyd spectacle. And think about the word spectacle, because we're talking about the power of the media to get everybody to look and react. And Nope contains this rageful ape that kills a bunch of people. And it's about the power of spectacle to enrage, to incite, like the mind virus. So Daniel Penny looks like a character out of Get Out, a Jordan Peele movie. But on about a year before the event, leading up to it, there was this repeated theme that we kept on seeing on the far right, which was get out of the cities, get out of the subways. And they were all constantly sending or sharing videos on Twitter of subways that made it look like subways are all very dangerous. Get out of the cities. So I correlated this get out theme leading up to this event where a right-wing hero basically shows up to save the day. And then again, he's the top earner at Give, Send, Go. So this Daniel Penny story is highly significant. It ties into the Batman story. It ties into the George Floyd thing. It ties into the rage virus thing. But very significantly, it's about to blow up. We don't know how the story ends, but it's relevant at this time. Is he going to get off for it? Lucid Stream says The Society of the Spectacle by Guy Debord. Great read. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because Nope is about a UFO and people paying to go see it. But he said that the spectacle was the theme, and it was inspired by the George Floyd event and the public's response to it, which makes me think that Jordan Peele directed the Daniel Penny killing of Jordan Neal. I think he was in on that particular psyop. We were talking about the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight and the spectacle that was with 60 million live viewers. And there was a article a couple years before where Logan Paul, Jake Paul's brother, reviewed Nope and didn't get it. And people remarked on the irony that he didn't get the movie since the movie's about him. The movie's about his brother. It's about the spectacle. But he was connected with that whole storyline, which I think, again, is consistent with what we just saw with the Tyson fight. And I do have a couple of other things about the Tyson fight we may get to. It was such a nothing burger of a fight, such a anticlimactic event. But I found someone on Twitter who had been looking at what appears to be additional instances of Masonic ritualistic gestures and postures. And many others believe that Tyson was holding back. I don't know. I mean, he's training. He looks like he's alive. He goes out in the ring. It does look like he's holding back. But I'm totally open to the possibility that an exhibition could easily have been staged in many ways, that it could have been more or less like WWE. But I'm more interested here in what is the point of getting everyone to look at this particular time? Is there a deeper significance to it? Lucid Stream says, Subway, what lies dormant in the subconscious? Well, the way the subway is used in the Batman movies is it represents the neglected underclass who are actually victims of the upper class. So there's this Marxist class warfare narrative and the fear that they might rise up. That's why it's all about Get Out. And there's a very pertinent scene where Heath Ledger burns his cash, a big pyramid of money, and he says Gotham deserves a better class of criminal. Because for him it wasn't about money. It's about the class struggle. Lane Dion says, Paul's winning speech was echoing Trump's new golden era ideas. Yeah, I would like to say too, and this is axiomatic, that the entertainment is a side effect of the propaganda. So we are correct in trying to determine what the propaganda meaning to the event is. And I do believe I earmarked something where someone had broken it down and they said it looked like Jake Paul was being initiated. Others have found some fascinating Saturnian symbolism, including this shot at one particular, I think maybe it was round 8 or something, one of the rounds where the commenter said, Father Time, or something like that. Father Time waits for no one. He made some statement about Father Time, and Tyson's eating his glove. And if you look at a lot of the images of Saturn or Kronos, he's usually eating a baby. And then there is this image floating around of Mike Tyson not biting a baby, but there's a baby that looks like it could be a young Jake Paul, and he's biting on the shirt. Okay, we're almost through all of my links here. Go to ips.monster, get the newsletter, get the archives, and you will also be getting links to the YouTube channels that we appear on. And let's get a quick look at the numbers. So we're waking up that old channel right now. It's only got 20 live, but it'll go up as people start getting those notifications. 87 on the new channel. We have 33 listening on Twitch, and a couple dozen more on Odyssey, and about 50 on the audio streams. Isabel Ann says, Saturn was stopped in the sky the day of the fight on the full moon. Saturn devouring the sun, painting by Francisco Goya. Yeah, exactly. And it's a reoccurring theme. This Saturn, Father Time, the Reaper eating the child. I would even argue that the image of Abraham and the knife is a representation of Saturn. And it has to do with time, perhaps consuming new life, devouring the months. There's some kind of deeper meaning, but I don't think it's literally about cannibalism. But it's a very consistent theme. And to have Tyson associated with biting, you know, it kind of makes sense. He's already been associated with that. And then he's biting his gloves. I saw this picture of Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and there's a ray of light in the room on his right eye. And nowhere else. Looks like something out of Megalopolis. Just scrolling through my Twitter feed to make sure I haven't missed anything. There was something else. The main thing I really did want to talk about today, though, was this new information about JFK and Jackie Kennedy making some strange movie 2 months before his assassination where he plays dead, and she, almost like in a prankish way, tells the Secret Service to run into the house as though they just heard a bunch of gunshots, and they find the president on the ground, covered in Heinz ketchup. Like, what kind of trolling is that? And here's something I think is a little ironic. I just wanted to comment on really quick here. This is Stu Peters asking the question, have we been lied to about our history?
We live in like a vaccinated country. And I mean, not just by...
Now, this guy is also known as Faux Kiss. He's also a rapper. But he's asking about our history. Have we been mud flooded? Is everything fake? Have we been lied to about history? The irony is this. Our history isn't an objective record of what happened. It's a selective interpretation. And every single day, our real news is augmented with fake news, with agenda, with a certain biased worldview, and psychological operations and hoaxes. All of the hoaxes, all of the fake news goes into the history books. It's designated real. Doesn't matter what we know. It's what the masses believe. So, in other words, our fake news becomes history, and therefore a partisan propagandist within the political horseshoe is in the business of faking history. He's not just making fake news and holding up, or rather maintaining certain narratives. So for him to be questioning history is kind of a joke, because he's part of the industry that makes history. That's what they're doing. Fake news is making history. It's as simple as that. And so you look at fake news, it's easy to look at it as this side is biased against that side, or this side has an agenda. No, we're talking about the fabrication of historical events. So he's in the business of history telling. So for him to ask if history is fake is just kind of ironic. And I don't think at his pay grade he would get that. Yeah, his name, Stupiders, love it. Shed Dog says, Autohoaxology 101 should be required reading for all U.S. schools. I don't think so. You know, I'm against presenting the ideas of media fakery to anyone who hasn't already arrived at it on their own, because you would screw somebody up. You don't want to. I mean, I think it would be disastrous. Like, why would it would be alienating for anybody to be told the truth and to know or to understand it, and then have to go through the entire educational system that presupposes that the establishment worldview is the one and all of its news agencies are fundamentally telling the truth. I don't think it would be doing anybody any kind of a service. In fact, it would probably be damaging. I'm only interested in reaching those who have already figured it out, who have already been through the programming and then the deprogramming. You can't really deprogram those who haven't been fully programmed. I think it would be a huge conflict. I don't see it working. And I am, in a very targeted way, looking at where this information could be best directed. And the only place I find it to be relevant is Trutherville. There's a lot of people who are caught up behind wrong explanations. For example, geoengineering or synchromysticism that are not taking into account how this thing actually works, who don't have a full understanding of what predictive and concurrent programming is. And a lot of them are 95% of the way there. And those are the ones who are reachable. I would not have any interest in talking to somebody in Normieville, much less somebody still going through an education in one of these worldview reinforcing institutions. Let's continue here, looking at your comments. Tyler432 says, so the Trump thing was a redo of JFK. Oh, well, it's not done yet, but yes. But yes. In fact, here's another interesting connection. Season 4, Episode 8, Assassination Run, The Boys, Predictive Programming, Concurrent Programming for the Trump event. They changed the story, the title, because of it. Season 4, Episode 8, season finale in Stranger Things. Matthew Modine gets shot. Matthew Modine is the character who plays Joker in Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. And Full Metal Jacket is replete with references to the JFK assassination, and Joker represents JFK, who was actually a wartime photographer. That was his MOS, but that's why Joker has the target on the side of his head. And when I was studying these connections, and I saw the Matthew Modine Season 4, Episode 8, again, 4884 are always consistently connected with this very scenario. I thought, wait a minute here. Matthew Modine, Joker, 4-8. This is a interesting Trump connection. And the target on the side of the head made me think that Trump's 45 would be where he shot. And then you had Robert Crimo shooting up the 4-7 parade, July 4th. And he has 47 tattooed on the side of his head. He has 47 on his car. And he's the sniper who has Lee Harvey Oswald on his wall. And he spends his time going to Trump rallies. So you're telling me that this guy goes to Trump rallies, he's obsessed with Oswald, and he has a 47 tattooed right where Trump puts the 47 on his own hat. So these connections were, I said back then, and this is the summer of 2022, I said Lee Harvey Oswald is on the world stage. I have an entire article about the emergence of Oswald. Interestingly enough, Brock Purdy, which sounds like Barack, Brock Purdy, who was the quarterback at the last Super Bowl, he was compared to Lee Harvey Oswald. Leading up to the Super Bowl, someone said to him, what do you think about the fact that you look exactly like Lee Harvey Oswald? So what does that mean? Well, I think the connection has to do with Super Bowl 55 and Abel, the weekend, and the head wound scenario. And the quarterback, Brock Purdy. There's so many connections here. I don't want to get too deep into it, but let me just bring this up to show you what I'm talking about. There was a lot of Oswald being introduced onto the world stage leading up to this Trump thing.
Side pictures of you and Lee Harvey Oswald circling around the internet right now. People think you two look alike. Did you ever?
What do you think about images of you and Lee Harvey Oswald circulating around the internet? They're asking him to his face, what do you think about the fact that you look like Oswald? I mean, he's lucky he doesn't look like Ted Bundy. What an awkward question.
Yeah.
Right. Just a prop. But the Kubrick, that was the Kubrick signature, the head wound. And also, it's notable that 45-47 gives you 9/11. The Trump Truth Social Braveheart war paint avatar has a 9/11 encoded into it. 9 stars, 2 stripes. And then the photographer who photographed the bullet whizzing by Trump's ear is the same photographer who took the photo of George Bush on the morning of 9/11 when they were whispering into his ear. So the ear has significance. It has to do with secrecy, but the ear thing is referenced by the same photographer, Doug Mills, photographing both. So this connects 9/11 and the assassination attempt and the ear. There's another photographer for the AP who similarly connects 9/11 and assassinations. And that would be Richard Drew, who photographed the 9/11 falling man, and he photographed RFK falling to his death 33 years prior. Mango says, I let my daughters listen, no big deal. Right, it's just boring news. I mean, I grew up and my parents would be listening to talk radio, and if you don't have context for it, it's not like it's harmful or damaging or too challenging or disruptive. But I don't think that you can unindoctrinate somebody who hasn't been fully indoctrinated. I think they need to know what the establishment worldview is to even be able to question it effectively. And then some truths will get you Fs. If you're too honest and you're being factual and telling the truth and separating science from ideology, you're not going to be able to graduate. You got to believe in all the BS. Dante Jones, so nice to be back on live streams after so many years. Been spending the last few catching up. You're so prolific. Yeah, we haven't stopped. In fact, this is the stage of auto-hoax accelerationism. And I want to bring up that on the 30th, so in 11 days, we're going to have AutoHoax Con number 3. So the AutoHoax conferences are going to be held here at the IPS headquarters. I may have the cinematographer show up, and we may try to get some local debate and conversation. But we're doing a series of AutoHoax conferences, which will lead to a convention. Marcel says Oswald, Hollywood link. James Downward pointed out that Oswald and Jack Ruby connect to the Wizard of Oz and the Ruby Slippers taking him out. And it's Jack Ruby who takes out Oz. There's some interesting bits of 9/11 of Wizard of Oz stuff in the JFK storyline, which is very consistent. We're looking at multiple stories that feed into these things. Dr. Oz was born on 6/11. Well, something else too, Seattle is the Emerald City. And there's this music video that came out on 3/11 by a group called New World Order. It's called Let's Start World War III. No, it's by World Order. So Let's Start World War III comes out on 3/11.
The reason why.
And it's filmed in Seattle. And if you remember, in 2020, 3/11 was the ground zero for the pandemic in Seattle. And this video, which came out 6 years ago, begins where the characters are all dressed like Trump, and there's an American flag behind them. And they're watching a Trump speech, and they're emulating his gestures. It's kind of comical. Then they're in Seattle, and you see the yellow road. They're consistently on the yellow road. Huge symbol here for the Emerald City. And then toward the end of the video, they're all pretending to be Trump out what looks like in the winter, like out in the snow, which is probably a clue. And they feign like they're being shot. So they all get shot and they fall on the ground. And they're doing the double AOK hand sign that Trump does. And it says, Let's Start World War III. Now, I'm not going to play it because it's annoying. But as you can see here, all these Trump impersonators are getting killed. And then one more thing. At the end, the flag is now all the flags. And it says, We are all one. Which kind of ties into Megalopolis and Megalon, which is Mogollon, Make Rome Great Again, where at the end of the movie they replace the Pledge of Allegiance to America with the Pledge of Allegiance to humanity. So after World War III, we're all one. And then there's a final scene where Trump is on the screen, and you see that he's right above a fireplace. Now, I think that's significant because Donald Trump was just hanging out with Joe Biden the other day, and they're shaking hands and talking in front of a very loud crackling fire. And the way that the camera is positioned, the fire is right behind Trump. It looks like a scene out of Devil's Advocate. Interestingly enough, the Devil's penthouse in Devil's Advocate was actually at Trump Tower. It was Trump's office. So there's another connection with Trump, the devil, and all that. But I'll see if I can find that image here of, here it is. This is Biden and Trump. Just going to zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. Like Trump is in that fire, and Biden is shaking his hand. What do you make of that? Okay, let's see here. Neat Chip says, Neat Chiops, will 311 do a song called World Order? Well, if you talk about the band 311, they're very heavily represented in the predictive programming for Seattle, for the nuke and, I guess, the pandemic. Dante Jones says, are the Hermetic laws solipsistic in your view? If so, how do you square Hermeticism being heavily correlated with the world stage alchemy? Do you think solipsism can hinder the success of magic, or does it enhance it? Interesting question. The theory and practice of magic, as I understand it, according to the various magical philosophies I've looked at, especially the ones that get into group magic, would suggest that one doesn't have to know that they're part of it in order to feed somebody else's ritual, in order to actually be tapped into and your own agency become a part of somebody else's vision. So the Matrix battery analogy is there. And I think you could make the argument that major ritualistic events like the Super Bowl or anything where there's the spectacle, because it all comes down to the spectacle. If you look at the tarot card, the magician has one hand up, one hand down, like Baphomet. That's the Hermetic as above, so below. But it represents the concentration, the concentrated will, the directed, concentrated will. That's why we live in what they call the attention economy. It's all about your attention, not your money. But I am of the opinion that attention, intention, agency, will, that these are a factor in the reality that we experience. I'm not saying belief creates reality. It doesn't work that way, not that simple. If it did, moon landings would be real because everybody believes in them. It's not about belief by itself, but belief is a component of what we would call magic, which has, some would call it an art or a science. But the idea here is that we are causal agents in what happens next, moment to moment, minus the supposition that everything that follows necessarily has to be logically based on what predicated it, but that we're actually confronting a field of possibilities, and that the more remote possibilities can be accessed through the direct intervention of the human will. But this is the idea of magic. Whether you believe in it or not, the people that run this place do. And if you don't, and they do, and they're right, then in many ways you're likely an unwitting matrix battery. And I have a book here that in particular talks about, it's actually called, it's by Daniel Craig, it's called Modern Sex Magic. And it talks about group events where the people who are in these things don't know what the hell the symbols are. But they're in a closed circle where anything that goes on in this time and space is going to feed the will of the officiant, the priest, the priestess. I have a lot of research, a lot of literature that I've been going through trying to understand where magic and media intersect and what it might actually be. And, we should probably talk about this. Maybe at the next AutoHoaxCon or something. But I do think matter, it could be argued, is a substrate of mind. I think that's clear. I think matter is a substrate of mind, and we're not supposed to know this. But, and I was listening to an atheist debate today. It was Jordan Peterson and some atheists. And they were just talking about how there's no way you can systematically test the existence of the supernatural. And I don't think they're looking in the right places. I mean, there are entire organizations dedicated to treating magic as a science, as a practice of determining where one's influence can be observed. And synchronicity, like as defined by Carl Jung, the phenomenon would suggest that there is some kind of a cybernetic connection, a feedback loop, an interaction between the individual and the macrocosm. But it doesn't just happen automatically. There's a process, and the process involves trance, hypnosis, bypassing what the chaos magicians call the psychic censor. How do you get past that? Sigils, symbols, speaking directly to the subconscious. Leo Pyre says, Jordan Peterson is peak-controlled op targeting the 20s age group. Never trust Canadians. Just joking. Maybe not all. Yeah, he's interesting. But one of the things that I'm constantly noting is that if you're still in the box, which contains all the presuppositions of the world stage model, you're never going to have the right answers. You might have some great observations, maybe some great heuristics and great arguments, but you're still going to be wrong. Like there are so many atheists out there who have in fact replaced traditional religion with the modern syncretic blend of science fiction and mystery Babylon, the Nasatologists out there. But let's continue here. Dante Jones, I might call in one night to go more into depth about the whole JPB topic. What is JPB? Yeah, Trojan horses, Leo Pirate. Sigil magic is the idea of compressing or encoding images to bypass the psychic censor. And the idea is that we have a governor or a constraint on our ability to act as co-creative agents, that we're not always in full, I guess, in touch with this. This is our latent, like intuition, for example. Like if you think about it, most people you know, and likely you, have experienced intuition, maybe precognition, maybe telepathy, but these things don't exist. And this is what I mean about the world stage box, the simulation that we're in. If you go by the establishment worldview, these are all instances of apophenia, of pareidolia, mental illness, or cope, because you're an over-evolved ape with a big ego confronting death. So this is your defense mechanism, trying to pretend like things have meaning. So the dominant paradigm doesn't even include in it that meaning is a thing, or that we have souls. And I take the opposite view, and I'm not trying to be contrarian, but I am of the opinion that everything is intrinsically meaningful, and that the universe isn't this static array of objects floating in space, eventually going to stop. But I don't think the universe even exists until the moment that we experience it. And so I can't say that with any authority. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a physicist, but that's just my opinion. And it's the only way I can explain the interaction, or the seeming interactions between the self and events as they unfold, based upon what the individual, in this case me, according to my thoughts or my focus. And I have numerous examples of just bizarre coincidences that are just too layered. And like I could point one out in particular. I have a book over here where the opening scene, page 1, has multiple points specifically relating to something that happened to me. And I'm reading this book that I picked up at a used bookstore on the 2-year anniversary of that specific incident. And so I thought, that's really strange. 2 years ago, today, this happened. And there are multiple points I can check on where it was the timing of the book and the coincidences within it. And so that might not be a hugely significant one, but it's just one minor example of, like, what you ask, what are the odds? Well, it's not really that kind of a question, but I think it's something else. And I think that something else is that the information itself, meanings, recollections, memories associated with dates, that the information itself is a factor in what happens, like whatever you're focusing on. For example, opening books, and this is one of the first types of synchronicities I used to come across quite often, is I would open up a random quote-unquote book exactly to a passage with the exact information that I would need, like that kind of thing. And I've read of others encountering the same type of phenomenon, Colin Wilson, even David Icke, but it made me think that the information itself is some kind of it has some kind of an attraction to it that relates to what is in your head, what is in your mind, your imagination. So I think that the imagination is a key component to understanding magic. And a large part of magic and all the magical practices and philosophies that I've looked at involve a great deal of visualization, a form of active imagination, guided meditations, but specifically the aspirants are required to be able to hold in their field of view things that they imagine and project into their environment. So there's a lot of concentration required in this. But the idea here, the concept is that the imagination isn't just something, daydreaming is frowned upon, but it may have a more significant role. That it's an aspect of our consciousness that is, I think, too often minimized or looked at as a distraction. It's not like serious left brain, but though there's something to the images that is intrinsic to magic and making magic, or whatever they call magic, work. And it has to do with intention, the visualization, the imaginings, and the construct in the mind, this blueprint, how it resonates with the not yet, or the yet to be, like the yet to be created, the pre-created universe. The realm of possibilities contains all these things that could occur, but that magic is the idea that if you can create a facsimile of it in your mind, you can draw that particular possibility into your path. There's a pretty interesting movie about this concept called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once that gets into this idea of remote possibilities being something that can be tapped into through making certain choices. But it's about choices. Choices is a huge part of it, the decisions that you make. Each decision being an act of will. And what happens if you're not making decisions, if you're not exercising your will, you're just following the program? That's the definition of an NPC. And another good movie on this very subject is Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds. And in Free Guy, it's about these NPCs in this place called Free City. And they have no free will. They're following the program. And one day, this character sees a woman and he feels something for her, some kind of spark. And because of that slight interruption in his program, in his routine, he has a little bit of self-awareness. And he decides to put on a different set of clothes, a different suit. He decides to take a different route. He changes his daily routine in small ways. And each time he exercises will, he liberates himself from the program. So the movie Free Guy is about an NPC attaining self-awareness and controlling or taking back control over his reality and breaking out of their NPC controlled world, and it becomes the free city. But it is precipitated by his rebellion, by his decisions that go against the grain, or rather his randomness, which is a huge factor. And I mentioned chaos magic. And the theory behind chaos magic is that you have to break the routine. You have to break the pattern, or the presupposition that what's going to happen in the next minute is just going to be a follow-up of what happened before. And the object of the magic ritual, ceremony, practices, shamanic or otherwise, is to break that mold, to break that pattern, to break the habit that holds things in place. So chaos magic is really about disrupting the tyranny of the psychic sensor. And magical ritual in general is pretty much based on that idea. Okay, let's continue. Leo Pirate says chaos maxing. Well, the thing about chaos magic, which isn't as crazy as it sounds, it's this school of thought that says that behind all of the various magic traditions, there are some fundamentals. And if you strip away the religious symbolism, take it out of the Judeo-Christian construct, so it's not Satanism, it's not Wicca, you just strip away all of the religious trappings and treat those as arbitrary and interchangeable. What's behind it? And what they came up with, their whole theory, is that behind it all is that man has a multifaceted personality that is generally only expressed in one way with a few extremes, but that one has to access the entirety of the contents of their mind in order to bring out their latent, what you might call psychic abilities. But it's largely about the idea that you can communicate to the other aspects of yourself that you don't quite control through these other abstract or ritualistic or symbolic means. And this makes it very clear why all the various movies and sporting events have these halftime shows where they're throwing out all kinds of occult stuff that nobody would perceive. Like, you wouldn't consciously think, wow, this is some kind of Gnostic Catholic mass happening at the halftime show. You wouldn't consciously, looking at any of these movies, read into or see these messagings unless you are already apprised of this stuff. But it's not meant for your conscious recognition. It's meant to Trojan horse. They're Trojan horsing us with all kinds of stuff Okay, let me go ahead and continue going through your comments. Isabel Ann says, you choosing not to participate is a choice. We have free will to make a decision, but we'll absolutely have a detailed plan for our life. The birth chart describes that plan. Well, was it JP Morgan said, millionaires don't use astrology, but billionaires do? And that's certainly the case. They use astrology, they use astrotheology. Look at the timings. Like JL called in earlier today, and one thing he's consistently picked up on is the significance of the birth dates. I mean, we were talking about John Hinckley Jr., Reagan's shooter. So Reagan's shooter, who has all these connections to Taxi Driver and Joker and De Niro, who has all kinds of connections in predictive programming to the Trump head wound. But John Hinckley Jr.'s birthday is 5/29, which is JFK's birthday. So you got that connection. And there's more to it as well. But the significance of the dates is all astrology. And now it doesn't necessarily mean that these individuals are born on these days or die on these days, but their scripted character do have these very precise intro and exit points. But I'm studying these various areas because I don't have all the information. You know, the average news consumer is in a magic show and they don't know it. They see a magic show, and this would be the analogy. They're at a magic show and they can understand how 6 of the tricks were pulled off, but they can't figure out the other 4. So out of 10 tricks, they only solved 6. And so they say, well, he did magic 4 times. No, he didn't use magic 4 times. There were 4 tricks that you didn't quite understand because you don't have enough information because you're sitting in your seat. I look at the news the same way. I look at all this stuff the same way, that just because I don't know how it all works doesn't mean I have to default to the interpretation that it's meaningless, it's nothing, or it is as they say. So I don't know why these various psyops are just rife with occult symbolism, and their timing is always consistent with various occult calendars and dates, but it is what they do. 1900 Shed Dog says, have you looked into the plot of the video game series Persona? Well-regarded series, interesting premise. I'll take a look. Okay, here we go. Persona, role-playing video games. Core features, a group of students and a silent protagonist. What are we looking at here? I'll take a look. I'll take a look here. Because we do live in what you could consider to be a live-action role-playing game, or a LARP. This is the LARP world order. God is Bored said, I asked AI why there's so much symbolism in movies, and it said it was the tip of the hat to the masonry, honoring it and nothing else. Yeah, various interpretations. Some are like, oh, they're mocking us. They're just throwing their signs. The other interpretation is that they're involving us at a subconscious level in something else. So there's the propaganda aspect, where these movies are used, and movies, video games, and books, they are used to feed us with narratives, ideas, to form our opinions in advance, to propagate ideas through a form of advertisement surreptitiously inserted into entertainment. So there's the propaganda aspect, influencing your emotions, influencing your thoughts. So it's mental, it's emotional. But then there's the metaphysical aspect, which we've just started kind of talking about tonight. We talked about it a bit yesterday, and I don't have enough information to be 100% conclusive, but the more I research, the more I find it to be very consistent. And I made a prediction about the next Super Bowl with Kendrick Lamar. And my prediction is that it's going to be representative of the Gnostic Catholic Mass, where there's going to be some kind of a goddess representative in red, and then the Christ representative in white, just like Rihanna in red, male dancers in white, and Alicia Keys in red, Usher in white with the Phoenix, and now Kendrick Lamar will be at the next one, and he's consistently represented himself as a Christ, crown of thorns, and he did a video music award performance where the women were all dressed in red, covered in blood, which they smeared on him as he's dressed in white, wearing a crown of thorns. So I fully expect that this is going to be a repeated pattern with the next Super Bowl, and we'll see. And I did a quick search for Kendrick Lamar and the video where he accepted getting the gig for the Super Bowl. And interestingly enough, if you look it up, the very first picture of him in this video, he's posing in front of a giant flag where he's only in front of the red and white. You don't even see the blue. So again, this is going to be a consistent thing. But I'm trying to identify, as maybe an anthropologist would, the real religion and the meaning of the ceremonies that we're actually seeing. What got me, like, this original YouTube channel started when I began looking at NASA and its symbolism. And at that point, I started to recognize, hey, this is a syncretic blend of the Egyptian mystery schools with science fiction. This has got to be the high priesthood. There's got to be an esoteric aspect to NASA. And that piqued my interest. And I looked into it, and I haven't really stopped looking into this. Isabel Ann says, the cult plans according to the astrology because they understand how the realm works. They aren't more powerful, but they own the energy. Yeah, there's certainly a group that knows how it works. At one point I considered maybe the occult stuff is a red herring so that we don't notice the fakery. And it leads to synchromystics misinterpreting things. So I'm also open to the possibility that the occult stuff could simply be distraction, or at least I was. But if we're going to view the mainstream media writ large as the default world state church, because it is the state church, then we should expect it to have the same template as the previous one, which is divided in between the initiated interpretation and the profane, the insiders, the outsiders, the esoteric and the exoteric. So it shouldn't surprise us, but yeah, it does seem to be the case that, yeah, we are observing a global conspiracy to control all minds. And then to complicate matters further, in all likelihood, they do consist of largely witches and warlocks. Unless you have a better explanation. That's our working model at the present. And whether or not you believe in magic, it's just a broad term. And at its most basic, you would consider propaganda, psychological operations to be lesser magic, mental manipulation, emotional manipulation. Higher magic is where you get into the idea that you can somehow communicate with the universe, with the celestial, with the energies of the universe, and somehow become a conduit for it and take control over the material realm. And is that happening? I don't like to underestimate anything. And I look at the totalitarian control. I look at the lockstep uniformity of the lemmings en masse, the billions of minds who are totally subjective. And it's hard for me to think that the quote bad guys haven't already won. Like I say, resistance is futile because the public is in no position to think their way out of this collectively. Conquerors write the history, and those who control the present, and they do, through fake news, control the future and the past. So I think we have a pretty good grasp of what's going on. So the most sensible thing to do now is to become increasingly informed and less reactive. Because you can react. If you reacted to everything right now, you would be in a bunker. You'd be preparing for World War III. You'd be buying ammunition. You'd be terrified. You'd be running off the grid. And that's a fear response out of ignorance, and it is also an indication of how powerful this programming is, where They get people feeling so insecure that they're ready to go into their own home FEMA camps. Leo Pirate says hypnosis, mesmerism, ceremonial magic, witchcraft, all very sophisticated forms of lying. Well, okay, lying in the mundane sense, like words. And then, of course, today the more powerful lies are the visual lies, where people cannot see a lie. They can't discern it as easily as they can discern it if you're lying through your words. So most of what you get on the screen gets a pass. But then there's the next part, the next stage of it, the lying where we're talking about creative reinterpretations of reality through the spoken word, the spell that is cast, the broadcast visions. And that's what I'm interested in as well. I don't fall into the trap of magical thinking or The Secret, or people create reality with their beliefs. Like it's really not that simple, but there is a core of truth to it. And it's been occulted. It's been, I think, purposefully flooded with misinformation. But in the last year, I've put a lot of research into this, and I'm going to consolidate it at some point, and we'll discuss what we're possibly looking at here. And as it is with predictive programming, if you say predictive programming is not real, you're not paying attention, and you're not aware. You don't have the situational awareness. And if you can hand wave away or dismiss all the occultic stuff, you're exoteric. You got the wool over your head. Lucid Stream says, no, we're infinite. I don't think we'd be conquered. This human experience is a convincing illusion. Well, I would also say, though, that the beginning of wisdom is to call things by their right names. And if we don't call the elite, the programmers, the programmers, the programmed, the programmed, the conquered, we're not going to navigate our way out of this. And so I'm just being honest. You can't say that they haven't been cowed. Look at 2020. Look at the people covering themselves up in trash bags and raiding toilet paper and snitching on their neighbors. No, we're totally under control. Everything's under control. Okay, this is Auto Hoax, or GTFO, by Chief Crow. Thanks for joining, everyone. I will send out archives after this. And in the next day or two, likely tomorrow, we're going to have a live voice chat, a group voice chat in Discord. So if you get on the list, you'll get the link. So you don't want to miss it. That's going to be another episode of the IPS Deep Think Tank. That's going to be, in all likelihood, tomorrow. And on Saturday, November the 30th, we're going to have the Auto Hoax Con number 3. So if you want to be involved, just contact me at infiniteplainsociety@gmail.com or at Gilded. And if you want to participate in any way, let me know. That's going to be for the 30th. So thanks again, and we'll see you all tomorrow.